Oh, okay, yeah, we are live. Okay, so everyone, welcome. This is the fourth episode of our Meteor Mentor session, number four. It's going to be me, Serkan. Rob Pallav is going to join soon. And then, yeah, here he is.
Yes.
He's our co-mentor. And our resident mentees, Christian and Lucas, are here. A few other guys were very eager yesterday about this specific time. But I guess we are having problems with converting time zones, so that's, I guess, something we're gonna need to work on. And then we have Necmettin here. Welcome, Necmettin. He's actually from the other group. I watched you guys last time. Great questions, great feedback, and we're happy to have you here with us today. Oops, he just dropped off. Maybe he's too shy. Anyway, so okay. All right. So I'd like to take this opportunity to talk a few minutes about some of the topics we've been discussing earlier today. Things like offline apps, how to cache static assets into the client, how to do how to access the device peripherals like Bluetooth or camera, etc. Let's just take a few moments about this. And then, if you want to discuss further with it, we will go along. But if not, we will have wrapped something we have actually discussed on the Slack channel up also here. So it will be a good opportunity to wrap that up. So basically, the problem was Lucas asking us about how to cache large video files so that the clients, especially the ones on mobile, can watch them. For example, on a train, on a ride when there's no internet connection, etc. If that was possible. And then another question, another follow-up question was about Bluetooth, how to access mobile or desktop devices Bluetooth peripherals, so that we can develop applications using Meteor, accessing Bluetooth devices and the signals coming in from that. So for those two topics, first of all, Lucas also mentioned on the Slack channel that there is a package called GroundDB. What that is a means to store your database on the client, so that when your client is disconnected from your server, you have your data available to the application, and yet you can continue working. And then once the client establishes a connection again with the server, GroundDB takes care of syncing the results back to the server and getting anything new from the server back again onto the client. So that's a nice way of making data-driven apps available offline as well. Another thing that was very popular was app cache. We also have a package for that on Atmosphere. Maybe one of you guys can dig that up. It's called app cache. That allows you. That's a standard browser technology that allows you to take your static assets like JavaScript, like CSS, like images, and bundle them up and let the client browser store it. But the problem with that is it is kind of limited, like to 5 megabytes. Actually, that limit can be fiddled with. Still, it is a limit. It has its inherent problems, like how to refresh the cached assets, etc. But still, it's a base for you to provide an application that can survive offline. But then there's, here's Rico. Welcome, Rico.
Hi, Rico.
And then there's this newer technology based on what's called service workers. Service workers was an introduction mainly backed by Google that allows your application to work both offline and even when the browser is closed. It's like an application you have on your phone, but it's not open, but it can still receive push messages, something like that, basically. In fact, that's one of the purposes why people started using service workers, like as a means to get push messages from your servers within your browser, just like you do in your apps. But the service worker thing is actually it's like an application environment that lives on its own in a closed box that has some specific things available to it that runs when it needs to and just it goes back into the background. I think I have shared the link on the Slack channel about service workers. So if one of you guys can dig that up also and share that here, it would be awesome. Um, Service workers have something called plugins. Within those plugins, there is one specifically we can use that is called the cache, the pre-cache actually. What it does is takes parts necessary to run your application offline and stores it in a closed box, just like an application that you download on your phone. Basically, it's a shell, so that it can start off immediately without waiting for the initial connection to your server, and it can start showing things that are relevant to your application before even the data starts coming in. And this is also a new paradigm in web and application development, guys. It's called the offline first. It's like it's way better, way more device friendly than mobile first. Mobile first assumes that you are going to access an application using a mobile device, but offline first assumes that whether or not the device is mobile or desktop, you are going to be accessing it with or without a connection. Uh, that opens up a floodgates of new applications to that, like developing applications that do not require any connection at all, applications that can start up immediately without waiting anything from a server, or applications that provide a more native look and feel and experience to that. So I know I have done a lot of information right now, but these are just ideas for you to fiddle with. And if any of you guys want to work on an application that is required to work offline, or that is required to access devices, then this is a nice technology that you should be aware of and then look into it. And then finally, regarding the how to access the device peripherals, especially things like Bluetooth. What we have discussed a few moments ago on the Slack channel was about what if you want your browser application to access devices that are connected to your device, like computer or mobile device or phone, using a Bluetooth connection. The thing is, the inherent approach is to use either a Cordova application, wrap your web application on a Cordova shell, so that you have to build the APKs, or build it natively for your target device, or wrapped up in a desktop shell, something like Electron, which the Atom editor is actually based on, so that you have access to your underlying device. And that shell provides you access to the peripherals like Bluetooth, like other things and stuff. But fortunately, there's also some work on specific Bluetooth integration. I have also shared that link on the Slack channel, so again, one of you guys need to do that work for me. Thanks. There is a working group trying to get the Bluetooth access as a standard on W3C. And what that is, what we take for granted on our web applications, like a standard that is applied and implemented by all the browsers. And fortunately, Chrome browser has implemented that feature. So if you want to have a web application without any of that fuss around Cordova or Electron or those wrappers, you can actually natively, given that you are using Chrome browser and the latest one, you can natively access your Bluetooth devices, but that's a work in progress. It's not fully implemented yet. It's bound to have lots of bugs, but if you like the idea, you can take it for a spin. Okay, so I've done much talking. Let's take some questions. Doesn't have to be related to this specifically.
Yeah, it's not a real question, but what's the main difference between Cordova and React Native? Is React Native just Cordova wrapped into React, or is it something new?
Okay. Well, React Native is actually native. But the idea behind React Native is having you, letting you use development paradigms and practices and patterns from standard JavaScript, like especially React paradigms, like components, like state, like props, all those things, except the component names are not standard names like div or your component name that you have just, like the posts component, but it actually includes a host of natively developed components for the device. So, for example, a view component, or a menu component, or a map component that's specifically created using native technology that can be accessed through JavaScript. But it is such aligned with the React and JSX development patterns is that you feel like you're actually developing a standard React application using JavaScript. But in the end, the final delivered result is a native application using the native APIs and the native components. Compared to that, Cordova is a different approach. It's an approach that provides a shell around your web application. It's like a built-in browser, but that browser gets to interact with the device using that shell, and then within that embedded browser, your web application runs. Since those two natively interact using the Cordova features and the plugins, you can still use JavaScript APIs to access device peripherals and device features given the Cordova plugins. So basically, it is still native, but it is a native wrapper that is running a web application. React Native is more native in that sense, but given that React Native is kind of new in the market, it is still evolving, but there are really interesting tools out there. I just heard one of those new development tools a few days ago called Deco, I think. Have you guys heard about that? Let me just pull that link up for you. I think I saw it on Hacker News. So I have like 4 monitors and lots of browsers and tabs and windows open. I'm kind of getting lost in between those. Sorry.
I got the link.
Oops. Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm just about to share the link now. This is, oh yeah, wow, you beat me to it. Why don't you say so? Okay, thanks for sharing that link. This looks really interesting, and it looks like it abstracts away all the footwork, legwork that you need to go find plugins and components from different registries. Instead of that, it just provides you a quick means to get all the components together and then play around them, either using the code or either using the property panel. That also live updates. So if you are just beginning with React Native, maybe this would be a great tool to get you started and going. But the more important question would be how to connect React Native with Meteor itself. That's a question I don't have a specific answer for because I have not done anything with it yet. But I suppose using either standard DDP or a wrapper like Asteroid could be a solution. There are, I think, native solutions for device DDP connections like iOS components for that. But I don't have specific information. Maybe Rob does. Do you know anything about that, Rob?
No, we're not in the game here of developing mobile apps per se, so we just develop responsive web.
Okay. I actually read an interesting, very, very interesting article a few weeks back, especially regarding this offline first paradigm that's now beginning to surface itself with Google. The guy was talking about ditching native apps for offline first applications that are based on web technologies, such that in less than a year, this service worker thing might actually be available on all modern browsers, and it's heading towards that, and that is almost sufficient to create an experience that is mostly native, not in terms of device access, not in terms of animations and stuff, but in terms of how fast it can start off and how good it can survive offline. So it might still be worth taking a look at, but React Native is also very fascinating. Cordova is still there. It has been there for years. It's a proven track record, especially for standard data-driven apps. Those with not too many animations and stuff. You could go with the Cordova route, so that you can have your application, just delivered to the relevant channel. But the more interesting news about mobile development is the introduction of imports with Meteor 1.3. Because I think, Rob, it was you who asked this a few days ago on the forums, like, is Meteor is server and Meteor is client still relevant?
I did.
Yeah.
Purely because it seemed to me that with imports, you've got a lot more control over what your environment actually ends up running on, and it becomes much less clear at that point whether you have got a client, a Cordova, or a server. You've got something that could be desktop, maybe, could be anything, couldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a lot less obvious where those particular constructs within Meteor actually come in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we see the end of Meteor is client as such.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if they're going to end it or if they're going to, kind of still find a place to it. Nonetheless, your question, rhymes with me. It's like it opens up a whole new possibilities of maintaining what pieces of your app requires from other pieces of your app.
Yes.
Or your code base. And it's really exciting. You can develop anything targeting anything out there. So it is very powerful. It may help. It will definitely help along the lines of microservices and those kind of architectures that we discussed in the previous session or the one before that. So you guys should definitely check out how the new imports work within Meteor, because that's going to be the way forward from now on. And Meteor 1.3 is just around the corner, maybe in a few days, maybe in a few weeks. I don't know. I have no such insider information, but it's soon to happen. So you should start reading up on how imports work, and perhaps even start using the beta environment, just to get a feel of the structure, so that you can convert easily as soon as it comes out. So, anything else you guys want to discuss?
I have an additional question on the imports. It means, for example, that with Moment.js, now we have a package that wraps that library. So we can get rid of the library and we can import Moment.js through NPM. And we can use it at the same level with no question asked, with no issue at all. Because I think it's a huge advantage, but I'm still wondering if it's going to work seamlessly.
Well, it has actually started working seamlessly, because you know what? The thing you wrap and publish on Atmosphere is still an NPM package. The wrapper on Atmosphere depends on the NPM access that is provided by the package API. Instead of that, we now use directly from NPM, but use the import statement. And guess what? That relieves you of the dependence to the atmosphere package being recent and up to date. So that means you can use those libraries directly from npm, pin that down to whatever version you want, not those exist on atmosphere. You can even use pre-releases and such, and make use of that. And yes, it might have its own problems depending on the interaction between other packages and stuff. For example, you may have imported the Moment.js from an npm package directly, but one of the atmosphere packages that you are using may be depending on the Moment.js package that is already deployed on atmosphere, so that you might end up with clashing versions. That is actually a problem with React nowadays, such that even MDG and Sashka has pointed out that the way forward now would be not using React from Atmosphere, but using React from NPM. So we are kind of in a limbo nowadays. You know, we are still based on the package structure that comes from Atmosphere, but we are also transitioning into using libraries directly from NPM. But you know, maybe in a few months tops, that's all going to be resolved. In the meantime, such cases that you come across, come by, you should be solving one by one, case by case. Like with the Moment.js example, maybe if your dependency depends on the Atmosphere package, and that also satisfies your requirements at the time, you don't necessarily have to import it from npm. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. What matters is what is in your application, what is included in your application, and what it does. Does it do exactly what you require it to do? Unless there's one very powerful thing about imports, is that you can minimize your application footprint. For example, let's say you're using underscore, or I don't know if Moment.js exposes all those exports, but I know underscore does. For example, you want to work with underscore. Would you rather import the complete underscore library, or rather take that one or two specific parts of underscore that you want to use in that specific part of your code base? For example, what you need is just basic, I don't know, count by or reduce, and then you want to use it from underscore, and you just don't want all the other things that come with it. So that's a use case. That's a specific, very good argument for imports. That means instead of delivering the whole, lots of kilobytes of library to the client, you just take parts of those that you need and then deliver those in a few kilobytes footprint. So when you feel your app is growing and then you feel those as pain, then you might be, you might want to look into more of those details and, iron out the kinks there. But until you hit that kind of wall, just think about it as a transition, and then in a few months' time, it's just going to be, history. It's not going to be fun history, but it's going to be history. All right. Anyone?
I just like to say,
I know you have like hundreds of questions for each session. I know you're tired this time.
I'd just like to say that I have been really very impressed with the way MDG have been tackling this whole React and NPM thing. That they are really paying incredible attention to detail. Mm-hmm. And we're up to, is it beta 8 now of 1.3, and that is really starting to look very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so yes, in a few months' time, I think we'll be able to look back on this and say, well, hey, it's really working well now.
Cool. Have you had any chance to do with the new 1.3 betas that that you thought like, wow, I mean, if it weren't for this 1.3 and the imports and and the npm environment, I wouldn't be able to do this, or at least not as this easy.
Well, I haven't really been using 1.3 in that sense at all. I've been using it really just to get a feel for how it behaves itself. But certainly the apps that we're putting together now and the apps that we are planning to put out would be absolutely huge if we couldn't do code splitting with import. So 1.3 is going to be essential to the way that we build for the future.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And that being said, I mean, I'm also really impressed with MDG's getting Meteor aligned with the broader JavaScript community and the standards, like the introduction of 2015, and then making that a first-class citizen and the de facto standard. It's also huge. And then we have lots of guys working on promises and async, and that's also going to help a lot. Relieving Meteor of the intricacies of fibers and bind environment, or maybe just abstracting that away behind promises and async. Async programming, I mean, JavaScript programming, in a larger sense, is also getting much easier. Yes, there are new concepts getting introduced, and those new concepts may be a little hard to grasp if you're just switching over from jQuery and stuff. But still, it's not too much. If you allow yourself, just a few days of reading and fiddling with examples, you're gonna get a feeling that even getting rid of callbacks and that kind of nested help will help you a lot with your code. And then the new syntax being less verbose and getting rid of all of the extra stuff that you don't have to use anymore, like the function statements, and replacing using arrows instead of those and stuff, will help you write better and more concise code. Not that shorter code is always better code. Readable code is also always better code, in my opinion. And I strongly believe that familiarizing yourself with the new JavaScript standards will help you do that. Because believe me, when you put a project aside and then the client asks you to take a look at it like 5 months from now, it is really a bad feeling to look at it and say, what the hell, what have I done here? I mean, why is that piece of code there? You have to be able to just take a quick look at it and understand what it is supposed to do, apart from the documentation. So you should definitely check the new JavaScript standards out if you haven't done so, because imports also come with that. And then you're going to really regret not having that.
I have a technical question. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
My application, the application that I host to Bluemix, is working well, but within a corporate LAN, I'm getting this error that the connection, I don't.
Yes.
But it's working everywhere else.
Rico, I have not been able to hear you all that great, but based on what you have pasted on the chat here, yes. You are asking about an error that says WebSocket connection to blah blah blah
yes.
failed. Establishing a tunnel via proxy server failed.
Yes.
Well, that's a very common thing within enterprise environments.
Okay.
And most enterprise firewall setups or proxy setups actually, block WebSocket connections. Well, the easiest thing for you would be to ask your, sysadmin or DevOps admin to, that you need WebSockets for your application, or disable WebSockets, either one.
Okay.
Disabling WebSockets is your last resort. But you can do that. It's just an environment variable that you set up with Meteor. It's on the docs. but I think it does revert you back to long polling instead of
Yes.
uplog failing.
Well,
And
it's
not a
not
very
uplog.
Sorry?
It's nothing to do with the uplog, is it? It's long polling on the client.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Is the only
right,
change it
right,
makes. But you
right.
don't actually notice. You don't really notice much of a difference in terms of client access, because long polling is sufficiently good in
Yeah,
most cases for it to work fairly seamlessly.
right.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Actually, I've read a discussion a few days ago about how reactive GraphQL is going to be introduced into Meteor, and long polling is documented to be the standard there. And then if you want direct WebSocket connections and direct data reactivity, then that's something you're going to be configuring as a feature. So that sounds like a paradigm shift in Meteor, and I certainly am not against it because I have developed lots of Meteor apps until now, and almost none of them specifically required reactivity. It was always a real nice thing to have. It was always a real nice thing to show off to the customers. Maybe parts of the apps actually did benefit from reactivity. But other than that, a little latency, I really wouldn't mind that. So maybe killing WebSockets and doing long polling on the client as you described is not a bad thing, I guess, right?
I don't think that long polling precludes reactivity at all. It does alter the way that the stack behaves.
Oh,
So
yeah.
with a WebSocket implementation, messages are guaranteed to arrive in the order they were sent.
Yeah.
Whereas with long polling, that's not actually true because you're really looking at the sort of standard XML, the sort of AJAX type of
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
request. So you can't always guarantee that requests arrive in the order they were sent. But having said that, there's often no visible difference between a Meteor application on WebSockets and a Meteor application using long polling.
Mhm.
I mean, I would encourage you that if you're at all dubious about that, as you say, Serkan, you can just disable WebSockets
Mhm.
and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
It should look remarkably similar.
Mhm.
Yes, it's weird because the same application is hosted on Bluemix and on the Meteor servers, and I can access the application on the Meteor servers behind that corporate LAN. It's the same application, so maybe it's like you say, they're using long polling while Bluemix isn't.
I think Meteor will fall back to long polling if
Okay.
WebSockets isn't working. So your
Maybe it's
message
that. Yeah.
your message may be a warning rather than an error.
No, because it's I can't access the user
Uh,
accounts. I can't log in.
Okay.
that
It
that's
doesn't.
that that's actually a problem I've heard a couple of times about, and I think there's a specific solution to that. But what I know is that fallback doesn't always work as expected. So I know if you Rico, if you can search the forums, especially for WebSocket connection or the proxy server keywords, you will come across a few threads that discuss this and provide a solution. Well, I
Okay.
was never that, interested in this because it's something that you can specifically set, work around, and then forget about it, as Rob here told us all. So, but if you still want to, deal with that, in a perhaps more proper way, I don't know. You can check out the forums for those threads, and then maybe come back and inform us about it, right?
Yes, yeah, I will. But that's why I think that really Galaxy is the peace of mind, the choice for hosting Meteor applications, because
Well, I think if you still, I mean, you would still get the same
they're
kind of.
not
I think, Rico, you would still get the same kind of error even if you did try to connect to Galaxy, I think, because this is more related to your enterprise proxy and firewall setup or network setup than it is to your server.
Yes.
No, as I said, on the Meteor free servers, I'm not getting that error.
Oh.
You're not?
No.
Ah.
Huh.
This is the same application. It's I push the application the same day. I have this application hosted on two different hosting, Bluemix and Meteors. And on Meteor servers, it works behind that LAN with no problem.
So maybe Bluemix don't permit WebSocket, which would be very strange because they offer a Meteor deployment.
Yes, that's why I chose and did everything with them.
That is strange.
I think this is Rico. It would really be great if you could look into this and try to spot why there's such difference, and then come back and share that information with us.
Yes.
I will. Now I'm really intrigued.
Quick question.
Okay.
Is this proxy server possibly Nginx or something like that, maybe? Because it says establishing a tunnel via proxy server. It doesn't say this server. What I'm trying to get is maybe Bluemix somehow caches static files or whatever, puts something like an Nginx, a proxy server in front of Meteor, basically. Is it possible this is the reason? Just an idea.
Interesting idea, and why not? Let me do a quick Google check here. There are a few issues opened up against a few Meteor applications, I think. Yeah. You may be right, Necmettin. You may actually be right about that. It depends on the reverse proxy server that is placed in between the Meteor app and the outside world. That may mean, in that case, the difference between Meteor.com's free hosting, whatever it is being served from behind, and whatever Bluemix is using as a reverse proxy on its stack. Maybe you could also ask that to Bluemix, Rico. Right? Okay.
As the first thing I will ask them, I will open a support ticket to ask.
Okay. But make sure you search the forums, because I remember explicitly this being discussed on the forums a few times, in fact, and having been solved.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So let's move on then. Anyone else with any questions? Necmettin and Chris have been awfully quiet this evening.
No. So, okay, maybe mine is a bit more a coding question. So, what I try to achieve with my application is I want to create an add friend button. So I want to I have users in my community, and I want them to add a friend. And when they push the button, the other user gets a notification, which I already designed and everything, and then they can approve or decline the add friend. So if they want to become friends, and I was thinking how to solve this problem. So I was thinking about our first session where you talked about this transactions, so that when the people click on add friend, that there starts a transaction, and the transaction just gets successful when the other one approves the add friend request. Is that a way to do it, or is there?
Okay, I have an idea. Just think of it as a simple case of what a what a befriending action is. A befriending action is a request plus a confirmation. So you can store that request document in your collection with both pieces of information, like a document that contains request from, request to, and confirmed, true or false.
Okay, so I make if both are true, then it gets a Boolean true, and if one is true and one is false, I get false, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that could be a much easier way to design that piece of data.
Okay, no, then I will try that. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I just I'm not into deploying or in this I'm still in the coding phase.
You're doing it. It's
trying to get it done.
You're doing the fun part. The deployment part is not the fun part, believe me.
No, that's right. I mean, but there are services for it, right? I use a service I pay for it. So it's like...
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss about publications, because I remember Necmettin asking about that on the channel, and it's always nice to recap this information. From time to time. Necmettin was asking about how to publish a piece of data about messages. Messages was contained the content and from and the to information, and perhaps the date information. And Necmettin wanted to make sure that the connecting client receives the messages that they are the recipient of. But the collection contains all the messages, like maybe billions of messages in there, and the connected client maybe requires just like 5 or 10 of those. So there's no sense in sending billions of messages out to that client. And then, so basically, he asked that if he could use a query like messages.find recipient colon this user ID. And yeah, that's a really valid way to do that, because in essence, what you want to do is try to send as little information as possible and as needed by the client, and build on that. Sometimes you may want to send just a little bit more information in order to avoid, rerunning multiple queries, etc. But that's another topic, maybe for another time. Unless you're interested to hear about that. But basically, to make sure that the client receives only the relevant information, instead of publishing a messages.find, Necmettin wanted to know if you could do messages.find recipient this user ID. And yes, that is the way to do that. But he missed one point in that discussion on Slack, that before publishing that information, you have to make sure that this user ID is already there or not. If it's there, then that's fine. Proceed with getting the cursor from MongoDB and publishing it to the client. But if it is not there, so there is no this.user ID, then there's something else we need to do. And that is to inform the client that there is no data to be sent, because until the server, the publication, tells the client that the initial data is ready, the client just keeps on waiting. So the way to tell the client, here is the data and it's ready, or there's no data, but still it's ready, so that you can move along, you don't have to wait anymore, you have to explicitly say within your publication, either this.ready or return an empty array. And returning an empty array basically means returning an array of cursors that does not contain any cursor. To recap this, a publication sends down cursors. A cursor is collection.find. And you can either send a single cursor or multiple cursors that are in an array. And if you return an array that does not have any cursor information, that basically means I am ready. But the more explicit And the sanctioned way of doing that is calling this.ready, so that the client knows, okay, there's no data, or there's some data and it's just arrived, and I'll move on. So that's it. So Necmettin, yeah, when you're designing your publications, try to ask yourself this very first question: what will the client be needing, and is there a way to narrow down this complete data into what the client is requiring? And what happens if the client does not tell me what it requires? Because you may be having built-in constructs like this user ID, or you may have date information, or you may have like arguments passed into your publish function, and that you have to make sure that the arguments are valid and the arguments are there, or not. You still tell the client that it's okay, just move on. Okay.
Can I extend on the question a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
If there is no logged in user, this .user ID is null, right?
It's undefined.
Undefined. So when I run that query, meteor.find, where the recipient ID is this.user ID, it means where the recipient ID is undefined, right?
Exactly.
So when that query runs, it returns a cursor that has no records in it, basically. So I'm thinking in my specific example, I don't have to return an empty array at the end, but I get what you're talking about. So thanks for the advice.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Necmettin, that's actually a trap. The trap is you may have documents that have the recipient property in it being undefined.
Yeah, the thing is, if everything runs smoothly, that shouldn't happen, but I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, because this is, and it's not going to run smoothly. That's the main problem. So
can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
I think it really boils down to one word, which is indexes. And that is, if you plan on regularly using a particular Mongo field for searching, for sorting, for anything like that, you should make sure it's got an index on it, because otherwise, when you're searching your 3 billion documents for this undefined user ID, it will search all 3 billion documents.
Yeah.
If you put an index on it, it will return instantly.
Yeah.
So I would, well, firstly, I probably wouldn't rely on putting an undefined into a Mongo search anyway. I would catch it before it got there. But if I did, or even if I knew it was a valid string, I would still put an index on that document field, because otherwise, who knows how long it will take to run.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and also watch out for sparse indexes, Necmettin. There is this idea called a sparse index. It's especially important if you're doing unique indexes, which means sparse true means if this property does not exist in a document, don't index this at all. That means basically.
So will it ask the database anyway, or just skip?
It does skip the index. It makes your indexes smaller. It makes your database size and memory consumption smaller. But there's something very interesting. If the index is a unique index, that means, for example, that you can use that as a safeguard, especially within unique indexes. Like unique index does allow one undefined value, but if you have two documents that are undefined on that property, unless it is specifically sparse, it's not allowed. So that can be used as a backup safeguard with unique indexes.
The thing
Does
is,
that make sense?
yeah. The thing is, I feel like user ID, if it is necessary for the logic of the application, I would put it there anyway with a value of 0 or something like that. So I understand what you're talking about when you say sparse indexes, though. Thanks.
Since we're not talking about an ACID compliant database here, you can never know what your data is basically going to end up like. And the best thing to do is always, I mean, if you're using MongoDB, always make sure you have your necessary safeguards set up. Even you can, if for large, databases, you can even do things like cleanup scripts, like that run a few times a day that looks for data structures that are not conforming to your designs, and then clean them up, or complete the missing data. Because on MongoDB, especially with high velocity data and big data, you will end up with non-conforming document structures.
Can I add another useful tip for MongoDB documents? This was in response really to something that was on the Slack channel, which was a question about how do I delete old documents older than a certain time? And in fact, there's a built-in feature of MongoDB. It will do that for you. When you create an index, you can say, I want any documents that are indexed on this date field to automatically be deleted after a certain time. There's an expire after seconds option, which you can specify when you create an index. And that lets you, it's not really a capped collection, but it does ensure that you do not ever get very old documents, and it may be useful.
Interesting. I did not know that. I actually knew about cat collections, but this is new to me.
I'll find the link and.
Can I switch back to my messages example and ask another question?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go on with the messages example. Let's say the user starts with 5 messages, and the reactivity side of Meteor adds another message at some point to that queue. So the client at the end has 6 messages, right? Between 5 messages and 6 messages, is it possible to somehow find out which record was added and, I don't know, put some sort of animation to the adding of that message? Could I make myself clear?
Yep, there are actually two things to watch out for there. Yeah, the animation thing, of course, and then there's also the thing about the gotcha about I was supposed to have like 5 users on this list, but I see 6 users, and why is that thing? Because multiple publications, merge their data and then send down. The client ends up with more than what you think you have asked for. So I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss 2 things. Regarding the animations, there are really great animation packages on Atmosphere if you're using Blaze especially. I don't know the state of animations with React. I think it's kind of a gray area right now. There's not much animation best practice on React as far as I know. But Blaze does have some really cool features, especially a recently developed UI hooks feature that tells you what the UI is exactly doing at that moment, so you can tap onto that. But it's kind of a verbose API, so instead of using that directly, you can use any one of the animation packages on Atmosphere. Just search Atmosphere for the animation keyword, and you will see some really popular packages that help you do that, like animate those that enter the UI, that exit the UI, that get changed, etc. So it's really easy just using a single block wrapper around your templates to make them animated as they come in and go and change. Okay. But apart from that, the animation. Oh, and by the way, when you do find a good animation library on Atmosphere that you are content with, please do share that information with the rest of us so that we can all make use of that. But apart from that, I'd really like to take this opportunity to discuss the number of documents that end up on the client. When you ask for 5 documents, but you see 6 of them. You see, there's this, for example, let's take the users collection specifically. And then let's say you have a page that displays the users who are into playing basketball. And then you say users find interests basketball and expect the UI to show you 5 users. In the meantime, your user is not into basketball. And what you find out is that on the UI, on the list, instead of seeing 5 users who are into basketball, you see 5 users plus yourself. So there's 6 users. And you're not into basketball. So this is a common gotcha with Meteor publications. Because Meteor users has its own publication that publishes the current user. And in the end, they all get merged in the users collection on the client. This is a gotcha use case, but there are other use cases when you yourself publish the same data from multiple publications, depending on its criteria, so that they get merged on the client. And then in the end, if you just do a simple .find query on the client, you will end up with more data than you expected. So there are 2 ways around that. One of them is to repeat the same query on the client, and that's actually a pattern I've come to accept for myself. And I make sure if I publish something using a query, I use the exact same query on the client side for displaying things. There are interesting patterns to minimize code repetition there. We could discuss that later on. And another approach is to publish to an alternative collection. For example, not publishing from a users collection to the users collection on the client, but from a users collection on the server to a users into basketball collection on the client. This is an interesting pattern. There are packages to make this easier for you. For example, there is one specific package, I think it was from Joshua's maybe. What was it called? Rob, do you remember the name of that package? Oops, my computer is like dying right now. It is not? Okay. Yes, find from something. Yeah, the Percolate Studio thing. Find from publication. Yeah, I'll just share this link here. Template animations, right. Thanks, Nick, for the link. There's this package called Find from Publication that lets you do a simple .find, discarding any of the criteria within the query, that you can actually query on a specific publication. For example, the users into basketball publication. You can use this as a solution to that problem I've discussed there. But there are also some other patterns, like publishing to alternative collections. Let me just. Okay. There's a nice blog article. Yeah, I just shared the link here. That's going to, you should definitely read this article up. It may be a little out of date, but the ideas and most of the code is still relevant. It tells you how to fine-tune your publications in terms of whatever you need on the client, plus when multiple publications publish to these same collections so that you can distinguish between them or create alternative client-side collections. I mean, the idea between a collection on the server and on the client, although it seems very parallel, they can be two different disjointed things. You can take a user's collection and then publish to a collection called basketball players on the client using the same data or data from multiple sources. So this is definitely a good read. Please do make sure you just skim through that article, or if you're more interested, you can try out the ideas. That's an important thing to know about Meteor. Guys, it's been like a little over an hour now. I've got the time if you want to ask one more question or discuss one more topic. Anyone? Everyone's tired right now, I guess.
No.
I have one question about this publications thing. Basically, a publication is a connection to a data source, right? A Mongo collection.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Rob, would you like to elaborate on that?
Well,
yeah, please.
Usually a publication is a reflection of a part of a Mongo collection or a series of collections, but it doesn't have to be that at all. In fact, a publication can be something that you create entirely yourself out of random data from almost anywhere. I quite a lot have created publications from HTTP REST endpoints, for example. It's much more convenient to allow a Meteor client to subscribe, as it were, to a REST endpoint than to try and manage that complex interaction on the client. So I generally subscribe to REST endpoints on the server, and I use a Meteor publish to create documents on the fly from the REST data and send them to the subscription on the client as if they had come from a Mongo collection. But really, a publication can come from almost anywhere. It can come from MySQL, it can come from Postgres. There are a number of packages which will basically allow you to publish MySQL queries, for example, to a Meteor client. So it isn't entirely a Mongo collection thing. It's really almost anything.
Yeah, when I said Mongo collection, I was actually giving an example.
Yeah.
The idea was that a collection is a list of records from some data source, right? It can be any data source, but it's a list of records basically. It can be an empty list, or it can contain only one, whatever.
It could be a list of records from several data sources.
Basically a list. Okay. What I was going to ask is, if I created multiple publications of the same data source, for example, I have a messages collection in my Mongo database, and I create multiple publications of the same collection. On the client side, if I understood Serkan right, he says on the client side, those two collections merge. Those two publications merge. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that what you are saying?
Exactly. In Meteor world, if you publish from using multiple publications, taking from the same collection, the server is clever enough to make sure they get merged, and that's actually called a merge box. It's part of what's called a live data server from the server side of Meteor, and it gets combined using the top level document properties. Beware of that information.
If I query it, let's say the messages collection on the client side, I would receive all the records that came from multiple publications. But if the subscriptions to those publications still separate the records, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
you have to have this. You have to have the relevant subscriptions also set up to the publications in order for that to work.
Yeah. If I publish messages and new messages on the client side, I need to subscribe separately to messages and new messages.
Yes,
So,
but once on the client you query for messages, you're gonna get the results from the combined data.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
But only if you're subscribed to both of them at the same time. So therefore, I think we use in FlowRouter the template level subscription. So you can have the subscription for new messages in a template you want the new messages, and the messages subscription in another template.
Yeah, but they're on the page at the same time. Yeah. Both templates are going to show the same messages still, because the collection is global. So still you need to either separate them with necessary queries or separate them using different collections, or separate them using a package like find from publication.
So subscriptions become useless in this case, right?
Yes.
Because I have to query them on the client side also.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, so well, I mean, thank you guys. This has been a great session. We have covered lots of topics again. I love it when go back and cover topics from the previous sessions again, because it's getting synced in. I'm sure we're going to do lots of repeating on the upcoming sessions. So thank you. If you have any follow-up questions, please do so on the Slack channel. Rob and I are really happy to help you out here, as long as you do more work than we do. So thank you, guys. See you next week.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, guys.
Goodbye.
Cheers.